You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
JT Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Thor,
Corey Doctorow,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mott,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Sherwin Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is
Chris Pourteau. Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today is a very special episode, as for the last 4 years now, we have recapped the end of the year with my good friend Chris Pourteau. This year is no exception, and we are here to tell you what you should have read this year, what you missed, and basically berate you for not keeping up your end of the bargain. I say that jokingly because last year Chris and I both were like, man, we didn't get to all of the stuff that we wanted to this year, and it's been a very different year for me this year. How about you, Chris? You kind of had a funky year last year. How's your year this time been?
Not bad. I got a little bit more read than I did the previous year, which was almost nothing, which I'm embarrassed to say. But I kind of got some books under the belt.
Yeah. Did you read anything that surprised you this year that maybe you didn't expect to like, but you did, or maybe fell in love with something that you did anything surprise you?
I don't know about surprise. So, the last time I was on your show with David Bruns, we were talking about this series that we're writing, the SynCorp saga. Yeah. And the first 3 books are out, which he took the lead on, and the next 3 books are there. It's going to be a different series, but set in the same universe, and I'm taking the lead on those. And the way we're billing sort of that second series is The Godfather meets The Expanse. So I've been reading this year. I bring that up to say that I've been reading a lot of noir fiction this year, like Fade to Blonde by Max Phillips, which is one of the hard case crime series. Are you familiar with that series? They're a published series. So I will send you the link to this. There must be, I'm just guessing looking at this, maybe 80 to 100 books. And some of them are new. They're all noir. That's sort of the genre. Some of them are new. Some of them are older that are resuscitated by authors, everybody from Stephen King to Lawrence Block, who you might remember from the 60s and 70s, and Howard Hunt, and Earl Stanley Gardner, and Mark Allen Collins, and lots of guys. And I say guys because I don't see a single female name on the list, but I could be missing something there. Ed McBain, the Gregory McDonald. So I read Fade to Blonde by Max Phillips and really, really enjoyed it. It was set in the 50s. So it was a typically, detective noir, and, the femme fatale was one of the main characters. And anyway, I really enjoyed that, and read The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett. Went back for the classic there. Nice. And there was a series of, I will say, I guess, novellas by Larry Niven called Flatlanders, the collected tales of Gil the Arm, in quotation marks, the Arm, Gil the Arm Hamilton. And sort of like what I'm doing, in the sense that I'm taking a sort of noir character and putting them into the future in a science fiction motif. And that's what he does in that collection of novellas. And it was a lot of fun to read as well. So doing a lot of noir reading. I read The Five Families, The Rise and Decline and Resurgence of America's Most Powerful Mafia Empires by Selwyn Robb. Which is an actual history of the 5 families that, ruled the mob in America in the 30s and 40s and 50s. So anyway, doing a lot of noir reading myself. How about you?
Well, I'll talk about that in a second, but I want to ask you about the noir. The series that you and David are working on, which spun off of a book that you wrote that I absolutely loved, and we talked about last year. And every time we talk about it, I berate you. And when is the book going to come out? Because I love the book. But it's it's this really cool mashup of noir and not too distant future sci-fi, but
near future.
But it's in near future. I'm careful to say near future because it's not like next week.
Right.
But but it's this really cool mashup, and I'm really surprised that other people haven't really struck onto this too much before now. I know there are probably some others out there, but it really works well. This character kind of anchored, character wise in the past, and it kind of this throwback vibe to the character with this kind of fish out of water almost scenario. What is it about those two things do you think that work so well together?
Gosh, put me on the spot.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you might have hit on it in the sense that you've got, when you talk about sci-fi, you kind of have some preconceptions that come into your head. You might lean the Star Wars way, you might lean the Star Trek way, you might lean the Expanse way, but science fiction is characterized by technology, advanced technology, ship battles and blasters and all this stuff, and you take this character that literally carries around a .38 and has a spring blade under his arm, under his wrist, and you throw him into that world. And in a way, his anachronistic qualities give him an edge because everybody else has the expectations of that world that we typically think about in terms of science fiction. And yet you've got this throwback character, and it's not like he's time traveling. He's the character from the 50s, but he lives in the 150 years from now future. So I think, juxtaposing his sort of tongue-in-cheek smartassiness, and just the way he approaches the work that he does as an enforcer or an assassin, in a sci-fi motif, it opens up some different kinds of storytelling opportunities that you wouldn't have if it was just Boba Fett. Boba Fett's from that time, so he fits in that time, and so there's lots of expectations that aren't surprises, right? Because that's what Boba Fett's going to do, But this guy, set in the same kind of background, set against the same kind of background, can sometimes surprise you or delight you as a reader in a way that may not be possible with a character that better fits in the time.
Right. And having a character that's a little elusive and a little cagey. I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons that people love Boba Fett, since you brought him up, is that we don't know a whole lot about him. He's just kind of this character that shows up and it's kind of mysterious, and yours is no different. That we're like, why does he behave this way? Why do we? And it leaves so many opportunities to really build that character.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, that's one of the things about character building that I like to do is, first of all, start with a relatable character that people can sort of plug into, and then have not only, some people drive their fiction with a plot, some people drive their fiction with character. I'm definitely on the character side. And so beyond what's happening outside, the person walks into a bar, they get jumped from behind, they get beaten up, that leads them to the police station, rather than have the character led around by life happening to them. I like to derive plot from character and motivation. So the character walks into a bar. Why are they going into that bar? Why did they choose that bar? What's special about, so they get jumped from behind. Well, how are they going to react to that? It's not, it's not just a plot device to get them to the police station or to the detective in the noir novel. For me, it's about what the character is doing and why, what kind of inner conflicts they may be having that sort of work with the outer conflicts that sort of impose themselves on the character as part of the plot. So I like doing interesting characters that are not perfect and not predictable, and that makes them very human, I think. And so I think that the more human you can make a character, the more relatable they are to the reader.
Exactly. Exactly. So outside of studying up for what you're writing and anything just for pure joy and pleasure that you've gotten into?
Well, I wouldn't say gotten into. I've read the next. I should have read at least 2 or 3 more, but I read the next Bernard Cornwell Saxon Tale novel called Warriors of the Storm, which is Uhtred, the son of Uhtred, set in medieval England. King Alfred is coming and going and trying to create the land that is England from Mercia and Wessex and the different principalities is probably not the right word, but the different regions. And so I read that. And I like doing that. I like reading. I've really gotten into The Expanse this year. I don't remember if we've talked about this before or not, but I think I'm on 1, 2, 3,
little bit.
5. I'm on the 5th novel now. And it's just fantastic storytelling. I just really love the multi-perspective character stuff that goes on in there. And I got into the books through the series, which was on Sci-Fi and has been saved by Jeff Bezos and is now homed on Amazon, or finds Amazon as its home. So really love the series, really love the books, really love the storytelling tropes and the way they approach the different characters. So I'll read one of those books, which is about 550 pages of sci-fi. And then I'll go read a Bernard Cornwell novel or a Dewey Lambton novel. Dewey Lambton wrote 15 or 20 novels about a character named Alan Lurie, who starts out as a midshipman in the English Navy in the Napoleonic Wars, sort of a parallel to Hornblower, only much earthier. Alan is much earthier than Horatio Hornblower ever was, which is one reason I like the books, actually. So I'll read a sci-fi novel, and then I'll go back and read a medieval England novel, or I'll read a Napoleonic naval novel or something like that, just to clear my palate.
So are you do you like audiobooks at all? I don't know if we've ever really talked about audiobooks. I've got nothing against audiobooks, and it's certainly the up and coming platform for sure. Getting your fiction. I'm just not an Audible person. I'm not talking about the company. I mean, just oral, my ears, AURAL, my ear. I'm just not, I can, but then my mind starts to wander. I'll start it going, and then 10 minutes later, I'm like, what the hell just happened in the last 10 minutes? Because my mind goes off elsewhere. If I'm looking at words on a page or words on a Kindle, I'm in the story. I can lose myself in it, but audiobooks just don't do it for me. I am the exact opposite.
And that is why we're married, and it's lasted this long, folks.
That's right. It's not just for the kids.
It's not just for the children.
I am, and I've talked about this before that I have dyslexia, and there are lots of little things that you learn to work around and cope. But one of the things that you have to deal with is that if there are any distractions around you, they will, if you're not focused, like laser focused, then things will start moving around, or you just don't comprehend what you read. You know that you read this whole page and a half, and you just have no idea what you just read, and you have to go back and you read it over again. And I'll go through that. So a lot of my reading, physical reading that I do is laying in bed at the end of the day. And I just don't get as many pages read as I want to in that amount of time because I usually fall asleep because I'm getting old. But audiobooks.
I'm sorry. What did you say? You're cold. Put a blanket on, boy.
It's for the children. But I can listen to an audiobook when I'm being taxi driver for the kids, or even sometimes if I'm editing podcasts and stuff like that. Once I've done the listen through, and then there's a lot of mechanical steps to go with it, I'll pop on an audiobook and I'll listen, or just all throughout the day. And I probably listen. I know I listened to over 100 books this year.
Wow, man, that just blows my mind.
Yeah,
and you don't experience the same kind of distraction issues with the audiobooks?
A little, but not near what I do with physical reading.
Not since the bus hit you, and then it was just like, okay, I'm going to pay attention when I'm crossing the street.
You fall down a well, the eyes go crossed.
Yeah, one lawsuit later, and everything's blown to hell. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. But no, it's and I can speed it up. Most of the time I listen on at least 1.2x. Sometimes if the narrator is very slow and deliberate, you can crank it up and man, I can get through a book in a day or two. With really good comprehension. I remember a lot. I remember, little character things, and it's so I use that to transition. Probably the best book I read this year was Haley Stone's new book, Make Me No Grave. Have you read it?
Yeah, I have not, but Allie, my wife Allison, has read it, and is not. I became friends with Haley on Facebook about 4 or 5 days ago. And the first thing I said was sent her a message, and I said, hey, I just want you to know, my wife is reading your book, loves it a lot, and she's not even a Western fan. So she's reading a genre she doesn't like and is really liking the book because it's so well written.
It's so funny because I had Haley on the show just last week on episode 530, and I was, we talked. She was a sci-fi writer. She wrote some really great sci-fi, some post-apocalyptic, like real, hardcore nerd sci-fi, like you and I like. Right. And then she comes out with this Western that is just crazy good. And I asked her, I said, Haley, so when did you start loving Westerns? Because you can tell that you were like way deep, because it is pitch perfect. If you've
Did she say, I don't know, what time is it?
Well, she was like, well, when I played Red Dead Redemption, and I was like, oh, wow, this is a new on-ramp to genre writing that I'm, of course, I think of gaming. I don't know that gaming has come to the point where it is front burner entertainment.
And the best game. I mean, it depends, right? There's different games, like there's different books. There's shooters, first person shooters, which like Fortnite, where you jump into a group for 15 minutes and you dive into a place and you shoot things up and you get things, and and then there's the storytelling stuff, which like the Walking Dead games that I played. Who was that they just closed? They just shuttered their doors. God, I'll remember in 15 minutes. But anyway, there are games that rely on story. And you're right. I mean, it's a way of helping gamers who might not be great readers, or when I say great, I mean, regular readers, learn to appreciate story and storytelling. And so it sounds kind of like maybe, that was the inroad for her.
Yeah. Well, she said that she loved it so much. She loved the tone and the setting and all that then she started going back and, she looked up all the classic movies and, Outlaw Josie Wales and Carol Ryder and went way deep, and which I just thought that was hilarious. Everybody has their own, way into something. But it is, and it's kind of my favorite thing right now because it's a Western and it's a tried and true Western. It's not a knockoff. I forget who it is, and somebody will correct me, but one of I think it's the guys with the self-publishing podcast. I think that's the name of the podcast. Mm-hmm. And they talked about if you want to write in a genre that you're not familiar with and you don't want to get pegged for not being authentic, then just add a unicorn to it. So they wanted to write a Western, and so they wrote a unicorn Western.
Right.
And, once you introduce a unicorn, then nobody's going to, bitch about whether Smith & Wesson was making, 357 at that point in time, or if the barrel was rifled or not. Unicorns throw everything out the window. Well, this is not a unicorn Western. This is legit. Anyone who loves the genre will appreciate it and will be impressed. But it's also a fantasy novel, and it has very, very subtle magic. It's like an alternative history kind of thing with authentic Western genre roots. It's so crazy and so well done. And we had a great conversation about that this was a passion project of hers, and she was sure that nobody was gonna want to publish it, and all of that kind of stuff, and it eventually found a home with the guys at Athon, and is doing really well. But I think that's my favorite book of the year. That's what I'm going to call my book of the year.
Okay, well, that's going to be
that's so good.
That's going to be my next palate cleanser then, because I had downloaded the sample, and of course we're buddies with Rhett and Steve over at Athon Books, so I had they were talking it up, and I said I'm reading this Expanse book, of course, at the moment. Yeah. So I think it was on sale or something, so I bought it for Allie because she was looking for something new to read, and she just plowed through it and just loved it. So I think that's going to be my next read.
So good. So good. I can't say enough good about it, but I don't want to just talk about it. But it's great. Great.
Yeah, didn't she have her own show, Hank?
She did have her own show.
Move on now,
I'm sorry,
please.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Jeez. But yeah, I read a lot of mystery thrillers this year, and a lot of good books came out. A lot of books came out this year. One trend that I've noticed, it's really interesting, especially in traditional publishing. We have several long-time established writers that had established franchises, and those writers have passed on, and new younger writers have taken over those franchises.
Oh, yeah.
I can think the Mitch Rapp series taken over by Kyle Mills, who's become a good friend. And he's doing exceptional stuff with that.
And what's over the Tom Clancy stuff too?
Yes. And I had him on. The Robert B. Parker, all of the Robert B. Parker series have been kind of spun back up with new authors. What do you think about an established series taking on new life with a new author?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me that. This is like reinventing superheroes in comics instead of just doing a new hero.
And I have feelings about it, but I'd like to hear your
look. Okay, so I get the business model of it. I get that publisher honestly is, and I'm just being crass, I guess, but the publisher is trading on the dead person's name, of course, which is a little distasteful to me, but it's not my business. It's not my IP. It's not my book series. So, I think from the sense that it's given a new author a chance to find a wide audience. Obviously, they're talented, or the publisher wouldn't have turned over the franchise to this individual, whichever individual it is per franchise, right? So it's giving them an opportunity. So that's a good thing. I guess the market will tell if readers still like it, and it doesn't really matter that the original author is in the grave. So sure, go for it. Why not?
Well, I had very particular feelings in the beginning. I was a huge Clancy fan, especially when Dawn and I first got married 25 years ago. I was reading
silver quarter century.
I was a huge Clancy reader, and I just loved those big, sprawling, kind of big stage world event conspiracy, kind of things. And I loved it. And I didn't think anybody could top Clancy. Well, later there are some rumors that start coming out that maybe Clancy had some help with some of those. Don't know if those are true or not, but, I wouldn't doubt it that he at least had, someone, digging information for him and stuff like that. And, which is, I don't know if that's matters one way or another, but, when someone starts taking over, I don't know. You kind of feel like as a reader that you build a relationship with the writer, and with that relationship comes a certain amount of trust that they're going to deliver a certain thing. And this is a very one-sided relationship. And when you start saying it out loud, it seems really stupid.
I totally get it. It's an intimate relationship in a way, because you've handed over your dollars and you've gotten the book of any kind, whatever we're talking about, and you plow into it and you decide, whether you like it or not. And, you know, the author has an obligation to write the best story they can, and you have an obligation to pay them $6.99 or whatever, and but no obligation to like it.
Right.
You know? So,
right. What I find interesting is some of these established characters. We'll just take Mitch Rapp for example, and we had a big budget Mitch Rapp movie last year that was pretty good. Kyle and I talked not long ago. The new Mitch Rapp book came out, and it has gone directions that what's his name that I'm completely drawing a blank on right now. The original author never would have done. Vince Flynn. Vince never would have taken the story in this particular direction. He never would have anticipated world events would be what they are now, and it's kind of grown far beyond where Vince Flynn ever left the series. So now it's this really interesting hybrid now that Kyle's done several books in the series where Mitch has kind of grown past both of them. And, it's kind of at a weird place, you know, that's like you can't exactly, hold the character to Vince Flynn anymore. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Okay, so let me ask you that. Let me ask you a question about that. Is that a bad thing?
Well, I don't think in this case, no. Now I've seen a couple of other franchises that have continued, and I won't name them because I just won't. But those stories did not work as well. You know, so I can't say that it's a bad thing or a cheap thing on the surface because I've seen it work well. But I've also seen it not work well. So I guess we just have to see.
Well, and you know, the market's are ultimately going to decide, right? You know, either the new co-author that picked up the standard is going to make it with characters, or they're not.
Yeah,
and you know, as always, the market will decide.
Exactly. So I guess, you know, books are no different. We kind of hold books to a higher art standard, I guess. But in the end, you know, people are either going to support it and that will give incentive to keep doing it or they won't. So, we'll see. But it's an interesting trend that I've noticed this year. There's been several, sleeping series that have been revived, with new authors. And I just think it's something to watch for the next year and just see, if this continues. It kind of, and you and I have bitched and moaned a lot about this in the past that especially with kind of geeky stuff that, you know, we take something that's been beat to death and, you know, give it a few years and then we're going to reboot it and bring in new people. I mean, look at TV right now. We have on TV right now, Hawaii Five-0, Magnum PI, MacGyver, and I don't know how many others, but, and these are completely different stories with completely different characters. I haven't watched any of them, but I heard that Higgins is a woman on Magnum PI. I
don't watch it either, but I watched the trailer, and that is true.
Yeah, so I mean, there's nothing. It's like in name only. So I don't know. I guess, you know, it was only time for. It would have happened with books too, I guess is what I'm saying, because
it was destined for that, right? It was gonna happen eventually.
Yeah, the safe money, is in. Yeah,
but I mean, and I'm not. Let me play devil's advocate. The devil being the publishing industry. If you can bank a check easy, why wouldn't you do that? You know, right. I'm not talking about literary value. I'm not talking about, you know, let's make something new instead of rehashing something old. I'm not talking about just the pure business side of the argument. Why wouldn't you do that?
True.
You know?
True.
So and I can see it, especially the publishing industry, because, you know, they're struggling with the whole digital, you know, revolution right now. So they're doing everything they can to keep their head above water, I think.
Still struggling. How many years have we been talking about this? Like,
well, yeah, but it's
figured it out yet?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you know, okay. I know that, you know, it takes a long time to steer the Titanic, but come on, guys, this is get it together.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like I said, I have seen series that are really working, and the characters are growing. So I'm not poo-pooing the entire idea. I was skeptical at first, but I have seen that not only can it work, but good things can happen. So I'm staying open about it. But what were you going to say before I cut you off?
Hell, I don't remember, dude. That was like 15 seconds ago.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know. Something about the publishing industry, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll come back around.
I'm sure it will. So yeah, that, let's see, what else has been a big trend this year? So I think I said I've read a lot of mystery thrillers, a lot of psychological thrillers this year. It's been a big year for that. Mm-hmm. Do you like those kind of stories at all?
I do.
The Gone Girl, kind of, somebody's crazy and,
Yeah, we watched Sharper Things on HBO.
How was it?
It was terrific. But
by
it's,
Gillian Flynn?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I thought of that. Yeah, it was great. I mean, it's a very psychologically intense show. If you have mommy issues, you might think twice about watching it. So amazingly, they had a pretty big audience though, since everybody has mommy issues. But anyway,
maybe I'll give it a couple months.
Yeah. That'd probably be a good idea.
Yeah. So, but, it's really interesting to see, to kind of look at the end of the year and see what we, as kind of the group of people, what things are really selling and then try to derive what that means about us. It's been a lot of like really popular true crime this year, a lot of psychological, mommy issue books. I think, I don't know, maybe the state of the country isn't, I don't know, but, it's interesting to look and see.
I saw a headline yesterday, I think it was, that and I'm going to get it wrong, but it said something like streaming revenue exceeds broadcast revenue, or maybe it was movies in theaters for the first time ever.
Wow.
So like Netflix, Hulu, and all that, is maybe is original programming on Netflix and Hulu and exceeded the. And so the reason I brought that up, assuming it's even right, and I'm just not misremembering it. I don't know about the theaters in your area. Do you have theaters in your area?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I know you live in Mississippi. I wasn't sure. Texas, we have lots of them.
The moving pictures. We have the moving.
We got the moving pictures. Yeah, the man stands there and cranks it, and they just move. Anyway, one thing I've noticed locally here in the last 3 or 4 years is the luxury lounger trend. Do you guys have this where they went back and refitted all the theaters so you can, you have like 15 seats in the whole thing now and you can like rear back and.
We don't, although there's a theater close to us, like 25 miles away, and they have
It takes 2 sets of horses to get there. Go ahead, sorry.
But out in the town I live in, we have one movie theater and it has 8 screens. And, you get about, a movie lasts in the theater about 35 minutes. And then,
those are some short movies right there.
It's like if you don't go the first 2 weeks of the movie, you're going to miss it because they're changing them out for the next batch to come
through. But they're just the traditional seating of row and row and row. Okay. The reason I bring up the other thing is, it's like I've noticed when a restaurant is about to go out of business, they start a lunch buffet.
Right. Exactly.
So I'm just wondering if this is the theater trend. No, really. Look, we can offer you something you don't have at home: surround sound and a luxury lounger.
Well, they it seems to be about a 2-month wait now when something debuts at the theater. About 2 months later, unless it's just a phenomenal hit and it gets extended and extended, but you get about 2 months and then it's available to stream like on Vudu or some of the cable providers, and then another couple of weeks and it's out on Blu-ray. And there's just very little that I just need to go see right now at the theater. I usually go see the Marvel movie and stuff when it comes out with my kids because it's kind of a big family thing we do, and it's kind of an experience thing. Plus, you can't dodge all the spoilers, so you might as well go ahead and go see it. But for just about anything else, I can wait 6 or 8 weeks and then watch it. I've got a giant TV in my living room. I've got surround sound. I can pause it to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
The theater is just
You know what?
It's kind of an antiquated thing.
That's going to be the next thing. Luxury lounger, surround sound, and we will pause the movie so you can go to the bathroom.
Everyone,
we'll do whatever it takes to survive.
Right. Everybody line up in a single file line. We're going to the bathroom now. We'll resume it all together.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's going to be an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Or they'll replace the luxury loungers with outhouse seats.
You said it.
I know. Somebody had to do it, Chris.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Somebody had to.
Yeah. Somebody had to. So, speaking of Marvel movies, did you see Avengers Infinity War?
I did.
Yeah. Did you see the new trailer for Avengers 4?
I did, and I saw the Deadpool send-up of it, too. Did you see the Deadpool send-up of it?
No, I didn't.
Oh, yeah. You need to go Google that.
Oh, I'm going to have to Google that. Yeah. So what do you think of Marvel coming to the end of an era, it seems? And from a storyteller's perspective, where and this is kind of an interesting contrast. We're talking about extending long-running series with new writers. We've seen, comic book characters have been extended for 80 years. With the guys at DC, and 60 years with Marvel. Thereabouts 50, 60. But now that we're talking about movies, these actors, they can only, you can only continue for so long. And with the exception of Rhodey, and after the first Iron Man movie, is he the only actor that's been replaced in this entire franchise? I can't think of another one. Can you?
Yeah, don't get me lying. No, I can't. Not really.
I can't. These guys have had a 10-year run.
But I don't remember what movie it was, whether it was Iron Man 3 or it might have been Civil War, but whichever one they used the glamour cam on Robert Downey Jr. to make him 20 again.
Yeah.
I felt like I was in the 80s. I was worried about having a test in school tomorrow. It was horrible. But anyway, in theory, they could do that with everybody. They're going to be using footage of Carrie Fisher in the next Star Wars movie too, as opposed to the computer CGI stuff they did in whatever the last one was, where they had Grand Moff Tarkin was back, and Peter Cushing, and they had Carrie at the end, and it was anyway. Don't get me talking about that. But anyway, in theory, they could put everybody back at being 20 if they wanted to, I guess. But they're going to make another movie if they can make money off of it. They're going to do something.
Of course they are. They are. As a writer and a storyteller, do you think that there should be an end to stories? Is it ever okay to just keep extending something just because it's making money?
No, I wouldn't say. Well, I'm not the guy who gets paid from it, so what would I know? But I wouldn't say just because it's making money. I mean, certainly that's the biggest consideration for the publisher or the movie house or whatever. Is that the only reason to do it? I would say no, but I'm not the guy cashing the checks, so
yeah.
I would like to think that artistic, the literary art of storytelling would be at least as important. And at places like Sundance, maybe it is, but when it comes to the mainstream, it just doesn't seem to be the deciding factor, the critical path for entertainment these days,
Right. Now, I mean, while we're on hot button topics, can Star Wars
since all of our audience has turned the radio off anyway, listen to me, radio, podcast.
Yeah. Radio. Can Star Wars be saved?
Dude, don't get me talking about what they've done to Star Wars, or Marvel, the Netflix Marvel TV shows that have just suddenly been canceled for no good reason that I can see. But
the good reason is they have their own app coming out.
What? You talking about Disney?
Yeah, Disney.
Yeah, you mean their own channel?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're prohibited by contract for 2 years from resurrecting any of those shows. But
Clock starts now.
That's right. That's right. Because as soon as Jessica Jones comes out, like 3 days after it comes out, it'll be canceled, and then 3 days after Punisher's out, it'll be canceled.
Yeah.
But what'd you ask again? Who are you? What are we doing here?
I said,
you're not recording this, are you?
Oh, no. Of course, it's just me.
Thank God. Thanks, Connie Chung. You remember that? Just lean over and whisper in my ear. There's no, yeah. Man, I didn't call your mom and get her to go on the record against you. Yeah, boy, would she?
She's a piece of work. So, and I asked that about Star Wars for a reason, because we for some reason have been talking about these series that keep going and maybe get resurrected, and Star Wars has been resurrected, but seems to have gone out of their way to not provide fan service, and maybe because they're trying to reach a new audience. I can't speak to their motivations, but it kind of seems like maybe they're saying, okay, all of you guys that grew up with Star Wars, we're really not concerned with you anymore. We're trying to bring Star Wars to a new generation. Therefore, we're going to ruin the story. I
was going to say a new generation of idiots, or
right?
I'm not sure what the demographic is they're going for there.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Like, when you're taking a story, and it kind of goes back to that contract we talked about between the reader and the writer, or the viewer and the writer or director. Do we have an obligation to the viewer, to the reader, to continue something we started in the way we started it?
No, I think you have an obligation to, as a writer. Let's just limit it to writing for a minute.
Yeah.
I think you have an obligation to write honestly what you want to write, and put it out there, and either you sell it or you won't. But as soon as you start making things artificial, I mean, you're not fooling anybody, really. Yeah. I felt like The Last Jedi was written by a table full of suits, 3 of whom were lawyers, and 2 of whom were demographic consultants. Yeah. It just, it was very disappointing. And we won't even go into things like, let's see, we have an empire that created 2 Death Stars and a Death Star planet, and they can't catch one rebel cruiser. They can't catch up to it, or maybe even hop around in front of it through light speed and shoot it from the front. Okay.
Are you talking about the giant slow speed chase?
Yeah. The entirely useless. Yeah. It didn't make any sense, even though we have light speed. And could blow up Alderaan 40 years ago, but we can't catch one cruiser for 2 hours. Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm twitching. Let me take a pill.
Yeah.
There we go. I'm good.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see.
Hank is backing away from the microphone. Okay, great. Anyway.
So Alderaan, R.I.P.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm maybe the third one will fix it, but they are kind of running it into the ground in a sense, I think. I loved the first one. What was the first one called? Force Awakens? Even though it was even though they just pulled out all the details and used the skeleton of the outline for Star Wars, the original,
kind of what we asked for.
Yeah. And I was okay with that, because they did it in a way that was new. I mean, we had new characters, we had new faces, we had new lines, and yet the background, the skeleton, the foundation made it all comfortable. So I liked that. And I liked Rogue One, even though it was a one-off kind of thing. I really liked the way they did that. They captured the true spirit of the universe. I thought the Star Wars universe there. So I don't know. Maybe they'll fix it in number 3.
Yeah, we'll see.
On that topic. Yeah. On the idea of capturing a universe, I will eat some crow. I don't know if I ever said this to you, but I swear to God, I would never plug into CBS All Access and spend $9 a month or whatever the subscription.
We did have that conversation. There were choice words spoken.
Yes, some of which we can't say in front of the children.
And remember, it's for the children.
But and the puppies. I finally bit the bullet and did it anyway. And it's because I wanted to see, there was a lot of good press about it, so I wanted to see what Star Trek Discovery was all about. And I thought they did a first-class job of, even though with different things, like Klingons were redesigned and the starships looked more like the movies than they did, the original series, even though this Discovery is set like 10 or 15 years before the original series. Anyway, you kind of have to swallow all that. It's not 1966, so things have progressed. Get over it. But I thought they did such a good job. I binged it myself, and then I watched it again with my family. On the topic of running things into the ground, you do have examples where producers take something that you could easily say Star Trek has been run into the ground between, so I think there's something like 700 episodes of the TV shows and, 13 movies and all kinds of stuff like that. But I think they did a really good job of bringing something new to a series that I thought had probably been explored as far as it could be explored. So I was happy to eat some crow over that particular example.
Well, I have not watched it yet. I think one of the last conversations we had about it was that I thought the Orville was ironically the kind of the DNA successor.
Yeah,
Star
it
Trek.
Like,
even though it was, even though it was, I think people thought it was a comedic send-up. It actually kind of wound up being like a love letter to Star Trek in a lot of ways. And so I'm happy to see that it's coming back for a new season and all of that. But yeah, I guess, when people care about it and care about what people think, that you can push boundaries if you do it respectfully and don't take your audience for granted, maybe is maybe where that kind of separates. It's because it seems like Star Wars, was kind of playing like they didn't care what the audience thought. We're going to push boundaries. We're going to change the story. We're going to push it in new directions. And, the folks that don't like it, tough, we're going to go this way. And I think you can't do that. You've got to respect the audience for what they're bringing to the experience as well.
Yeah. And sometimes I wonder if they're not just making a product like, Take a Star Wars movie or even a Marvel movie, although I think those are two different categories. But anyway, somebody creates this big blockbuster movie, right? How much do they really expect people to, in the case of a blockbuster, people to make the recommendation? And so they have, let's say, 2 months of top 5 at the box office, right. Or it's just going to be such a blockbuster because it's got Harrison Ford's name in it, or it's got Star Wars in the title, or whatever, that they know they're going to have a big weekend and probably a couple of follow-up weekends, and as long as they get that one ticket price out of you, they don't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly, and which is sad.
Yeah.
But that's the state of the
By the
industry.
way, you can get Star Trek Discovery. I said Voyager. But you can get that too. You can get Star Trek Discovery on Blu-ray now. You don't have to plug into CBS to do it. So
nice.
There you
go. When you get the CBS app, how much other content are you getting?
You get
subscribed for Star Trek, but there's
so you're subscribing to the channels, basically the channel's archive, CBS's archive. So you can get Twilight Zone, you can get whatever CBS series wherever on CBS that CBS still holds the rights to broadcast. I guess that's the way they would look at it. You get to all that. So, Magnum P.I. I think is on there because it was on CBS originally. The original, the good one with Tom Selleck, not the reboot with
Tom Selleck and his mustache.
Yeah, exactly. Blue Bloods is another CBS show we watch all the time. So it's not just Star Trek. As I like to describe it, the Waltons with guns.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is.
We've taken to watching that like on Sunday night at 10. We 10:30. We'll pop it on. The Friday episode at Sunday night at 10:30 because it's the way to. Okay, we're finishing our weekend on a good note, and we're getting ourselves ready emotionally for the week. And hey, let's watch a Blue Bloods. A little cheaper than a drink.
while you sip your warm milk and get ready to retire for the weekend.
And have our cookies. Yes. We do it.
Love it. I love it. Well, speaking of series, and that's kind of been where we went tonight for whatever reason. You and David have this new series that you guys have launched. Is the whole first trilogy up?
The whole first trilogy is out. Yep. The first book is called The Lazarus Protocol. You can find it as part of the SynCorp saga. It's still 99 cents as we're recording this. I don't know when this is going to come out, but probably through the end of 2018 anyway, it will be 99 cents. And there is an audio book for both, for the first book and the second book. The second book's audiobook comes out on the 25th. By the way, Hank, audiobook listener.
Yeah.
Why haven't you listened to the audiobook for Lazarus Protocol yet?
It's actually on my listen list. I'm
Excellent.
we're taking off like a week and a half, and I have I have books coming in from other folks for shows coming up, but kind of Dawn and I kind of agreed that we are going to, take a week, recharge our batteries, do things that we love for us, and
the kids are calling it. Recharge your batteries.
That's right. And that's on my list. So yeah, it's in my Audible queue already.
Yeah, David Drummond is our narrator for those books, and I think he just does a fantastic job. So
I always love Mr. Drummond.
Yes, very dulcet tones, the dulcet tones of David Drummond. Which I can't mimic here because I don't have dulcet tones. But anyway,
I love it. So I know the first one is the series is a trilogy of trilogies, at least the way you guys first envisioned it. And when's the second trilogy cranking up?
Sometime early spring.
Okay,
is the plan. I've put the first book in the hopper. I'm working on the second book now. We're trying to get some books in the hopper before we actually release. So. The second series. So working on it.
Awesome. Can't wait to see what you guys do. Still waiting for ORP. That'll come out one day. I'm just gonna
ORP.
Beat that horse.
Yeah, ORP is the book about the noir enforcer guy in the future, and it's really from that unpublished book that this whole SynCorp saga has come about. So yeah, it'll be out one day.
Yeah, I just love giving you crap about it.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Chris, thanks for wrapping up the year with me yet again.
Oh, pleasure as always.
This is our fifth one. I was looking back. So, the 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Yeah, this is our fifth one. So one of my favorite traditions.
It's I know the holidays are coming around when we have to talk about stuff we did during the year.
That's right.
Ho, ho, ho.
Right. Well, thank you to everyone that has listened. Thanks for being here with us on Author Stories. We put out almost we put out over 250 shows just this year. It's been a crazy, crazy year. But thanks for everyone for listening. Chris, thank you for doing all that you do and for being a believer in the show and for joining me so often. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I appreciate the opportunity, and I always like talking to you, even if we're not recording.
So, folks, we recorded the episode you just listened to, and then Chris and I had a conversation or three afterwards, and we realized that, like we do, we get so excited talking to one another, just bouncing ideas off of each other that we don't always cover all of the stuff that we wanted to. And there were two extremely important things that happened this year. At least in our eyes, that we wanted to talk about that we didn't. So we're going to drop back in and talk about a couple of other things that were kind of monumental this year for us. One, and I think the most important thing for us as writers and for kind of the geek world in general is we lost the legend, the icon, Stan Lee this year. And it's kind of one of those things for me, Chris, that I'd been expecting it for a long time. Stan was old and he had been in poor health the last few years, but he was just kind of this ever-present presence that was always around. And even though we were kind of expecting it, it was still unexpected.
Yeah, I mean, his characters are like childhood friends of mine, right? You know, you have kids have imaginary friends, right? And my imaginary friends, a lot of them were tight, and a lot of them were created by him and Jack Kirby and the other writers and artists at Marvel Comics, as well as the folks at DC. But he created characters, and maybe it's because he started when he was a teenager. You know, he started in like 1939. Man, he started when Hitler invaded Poland.
Isn't that crazy?
I mean, you have to think about it. It's just, isn't that crazy? But he was a teenager, and he wrote about people with real problems. And we've talked about this before. You know, Peter Parker, sort of the epitome. He always had that way of naming characters. You know, Peter Parker and Bruce Banner, Reed Richards. That made him stick with you. And Peter Parker particularly is sort of like the epitome of the Stan Lee character. You know, he's this teenager, pimply faced, big glasses, stumbles over his own feet, too shy to talk to girls, all of that kind of stuff. And then Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. He's bit by a radioactive spider and his whole life changes, and he gets to become a hero. What teenage kid, boys particularly, I suppose the same is true of girls, never having been a teenage girl, I don't know. Maybe your listeners could tell us. But having been a teenage boy, what teenage boy who was pimply faced and wore glasses and stumbled over his own feet wouldn't want to be a hero? And he really had a way of humanizing heroes. DC, sometimes they were a little bit larger than life. You know, you had Superman who came from another planet, so immediately he's got this Greek god mythos about him, right? You had Bruce Wayne, who was a millionaire, billionaire, playboy, another person in a different realm than most of the people reading the comics, right? But the people reading Stan Lee's comics could really relate to those characters. And anyway, the fact that he passed this year was sort of a landmark kind of thing for me too.
Well, and I think for writers, Stan was an important figure, and we don't think of comic book creators in this light a lot, but Stan was a science fiction and fantasy pioneer of sorts. The stories he told, I was a huge Fantastic Four fan when I was a kid. And those were science fiction stories, with fantastical elements and all of that. But he kind of made science fiction stories accessible, especially to kids, because you read Fantastic Four, you read Spider-Man, all of these great stories, and then and then you go on to read some of the classic sci-fi novels, and I think that really provided a base for a lot of my love of science fiction, and then fantasy. His stories are mixed with all sorts of folklore and stuff like that. And I think he was a great influence in that area, and I don't think he gets enough credit for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's kind of like Star Trek. Stan Lee comics are kind of like Star Trek, right?
Right.
They were sort of this groundbreaking thing that went off into a direction, and I'm talking about the original Star Trek now, in its time, so 1966, this September, as a matter of fact, 3 months before I was born, actually. And so it went off in this different direction, as did Lee, and did something totally new that had a pervasive influence on the people that really took it to heart and really loved it. I mean, I would posit that you could not walk through NASA and not just randomly knock on a door and ask them if they weren't influenced or inspired by Star Trek. And so I think writers, if you're looking for economy of story, if you're looking for archetypes of good and evil, if you're looking for the visual mixed with the narrative, you can't get a better example of that than a Stan Lee comic book.
Something I heard the other day, Chris, really struck a chord with me. You think about the Marvel universe, and we've now had the Marvel Cinematic Universe for more than 10 years now, with Iron Man and Captain America and the Avengers and the Hulk and the whole crew. And you start thinking about the richness of this entire universe that Stan built almost by himself. Of course, he had Jack Kirby, he had Steve Ditko, he had so many co-creators. But I think a lot of these ideas came from Stan, and then he, like a lot of great creators, he had other people who helped him see his vision. But if you think about it, he started writing those comics in 1963. I think when he started kind of building the Stan Lee universe, and he was writing through, I believe it was 74. So from 63 to 74, there's an 11-year period where he's actually writing and he's actually creating books. Then he took on more the editor role and the publisher role and all of that. So, but for 11 years, he created this entire universe. I've been writing and publishing kind of semi-seriously for 5-6 years now, and I have not amassed the kind of universe that Stan did, and I start looking at, man, I need to get busy, because Stan and he was like our age when he did this. He was like in his 40s or so when this was going on.
Right.
Just incredible work.
Right, absolutely, and an incredible loss that he passed this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Rest in peace, Stan. We love you, and thank you for all the great stories that you've given us.
Hey, one last thing. What was his signature saying? His signature catchphrase, actually catchword.
Excelsior.
Excelsior. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Excelsior.
Well, there was on a positive note, my family took me to see a movie on my birthday back in November that I had been looking forward to for a long time, and it was Bohemian Rhapsody. And I had seen the trailers. The trailers looked amazing, but I was really interested to see how Rami Malek was going to pull this off. Did you see it?
Oh yeah, man, it was fantastic. And just so you know, I mean, you say you were really looking forward to it, and I was like, Queen was one, when you're in school, high school, college, whatever, and you collect music, I guess back when it was a thing to be held, with a CD or album or whatever. And Queen was a greatest hits band for me. You had bands that you really liked, and you got every album that came out, and you were just, you knew everything about them and all that. And Queen was never like that for me. They were a greatest hits album for me, a greatest hits band for me. And so I went to this, interested in the movie and learning more about it, about Queen and about Freddie Mercury and the other. I knew a couple of things about Queen, which does not speak well of how interested I guess I was in the band. One thing was that Freddie Mercury died of AIDS. Knew that. The other thing was that Brian May is an astrophysicist.
Yes.
Which I just find blows my mind. But anyway, and he plays a hell of a mean lead guitar, right?
Right.
So I went to this movie.
Hand built.
There you go.
Yeah.
Which makes sense if he's sort of a scientist type, right?
Yeah.
So I went to the movie and was blown away by it. Loved it. I took Allison, my wife, to see it, and she kind of summed it up after we left the theater. She was like, that's not a movie I would have chosen to go to just because I'm not that interested in Queen, but I'm really glad I went. And so it was a fantastic movie, and Rami Malek was a big part of that reaction.
Well, the movie was so good. My entire family went together, all 7 of us, and with kids in college, and Ian has moved out and he works out of town, and so we catch up on weekends. But we're at that point in our life where people are going in different directions and stuff. So for all 7 of us to get together and do something is fun. That we don't get to do it as much as we once did, but we were in the in our big SUV when we left, and all together
eastbound down, headed to the movies.
Right, and
we're going to see what they say can't be seen.
And everybody's scrolling through their Spotify on their phones and adding Queen songs to their playlist. That's how it was good. So yeah, I was definitely looking forward to it. I was not an uber Queen fan, but I really dug their stuff, and I liked that they are one of the smart rock bands. Like there's a handful of bands that
Rush, for example.
Rush,
they
Queen.
wrote smart lyrics. Think about
Boston. These are guys that are accomplished in life and could step away from rock and roll and be something, and so I always really respected them for that, and like you say, with Dr. Brian May being astrophysicist, and I was really interested in the storytelling of this movie because it takes the movie centers around the Live Aid concert that they did, and they changed history. That the events of the movie are not the actual real.
Yeah. So what? Okay, let me stop you there. What do you think of that? And then I'll tell you.
Well, I was not happy when I heard that it was going to be that way, but watching the movie, I had so much respect for the care that they took, and they went into it. I understand the choices that they made because it tells a good story. It's not the real story. It's not exactly the real story. But apparently everybody in the band was okay with it. They all signed off on it. And
the bass player didn't have anything to do with the movie, I don't think.
Okay.
He kind of retired from music, 20 years ago, whatever, and really didn't have anything to do with the movie. It was just Roger Taylor and Brian May that kind of shaped it from that side.
Gotcha. So yeah, if they're okay with it, I'm okay with it, I guess. I did find it interesting that when they cast the movie, Roger Taylor would not sign off on the guy that played him until he could duplicate one of his drum solos, kind of note for note. So I kind of appreciated stuff like that. I like my biopics to be accurate, but it's interesting fodder for conversation about storytelling because we have these events that actually happened, but to tell that story might it may have needed to be a 3-hour movie because there was a lot of complexities, and it's easier just to have the focus on more one character and how everything he does affects everybody else, and I guess you could look at it in the sense that everyone has their own perspective on things that happen. And to me, it might have played out like this. To you, it might have played out like that. So maybe that's kind of the choice they were making. I'm not really sure, but after seeing it, I was satisfied with it. I said I wasn't going to be one of these nitpickers that just tore it apart because of that.
Like you just did.
Like I just did. But
No, so I'm giving you hell for it. But so my opinion of it is that it's a biopic. It's not a documentary. And right. So if it inspired your kids to listen to Queen's music, and if it inspired other people to say, Freddie Mercury, that was kind of an interesting guy. Oh wait, the band didn't know about his diagnosis till 1987, not 1985 right before that. Okay. Go read an actual biography. Right. This movie is 2 hours of great music and a great sampling of what Freddie Mercury's life was about, and the way Queen got together, and I mean some of the things that I was fascinated by how they came up with "We Will Rock You." They were like, okay, we're great at getting the audience into the songs, and what do audiences have? They have their feet, they have their hands, and so the dome. They're like, let's get the people in the stadium stomping on the stands. That was a cool anecdote. That was cool to find out. I didn't know that's how that happened.
I didn't either, but it was really, really cool. From a storytelling standpoint, I think writers can really take a lot from the way Freddie was portrayed. A very flawed character, but one that was dynamic on the screen, and one that everyone in the theater cared about. And you could watch him making poor decisions, and then you could see his interaction with his wife, and you could just I don't know, you could just see it, like, oh God, I see what's going to happen. And
okay. Okay, if you're worried about technical accuracy, I'm going to have to correct you now. She was his fiance.
Yes.
And they broke up. So, okay, Mr. Garner.
Yeah,
if you're gonna
I know. I'm picking and choosing. I know.
What a dick. He's just a dick. I know. So, yeah, no, but I'm with you. But you say flawed character. I say human character. That's what makes Freddie Mercury so interesting and what makes great characters in storytelling. Anybody that's perfect, either perfectly bad with a black hat or perfectly good with a white hat, totally boring to me. Show me somebody that's got conflict in themselves, and that makes them relatable to me because I have conflict in myself. That's what makes them human.
Well, what's the recipe for a great story is to have a character, make people care about them, and then torture that character.
Yeah, right.
And that's what they did.
By proxy, torture the viewer or the reader.
Exactly. Yeah. And they did that in spades. It was a fantastic movie. If you're a fan of music, I highly recommend it. Just for storytelling, because it's a great movie. You've got great characters. I recommend it hands down.
Yep. Excellent show.
Excellent. Well, Chris, thanks for joining me again for the 5th year in a row. And today is New Year's Day 2019. So I'm looking forward to big stuff in 2019. I know you are. When's the next book coming out?
The next SynCorp book is coming out mid-March.
Excellent. Look forward to it. Thank you, Chris.
Hey, thank you, Hank.
Thanks for listening to the Author Stories podcast. You can find archives of all of the shows at hankgarner.com, and when you're there, please subscribe. Up next is an audiobook clip from Richard Gleaves' The Jason Crane series.
I'm melting, cried Joey. Take the picture already. He stood with one arm around the bronze waist of the bewitched tribute statue, Samantha Stevens, riding a broom across a crescent moon. Jason tried in vain to frame the shot without any tourists in it, but that was impossible. From all points of the compass, a merry horde had arrived for Salem's 2-day summer psychic fair. All the commuter trains had burst open, like cornucopias filled beyond capacity, spilling endless fruits and nuts onto the red brick sidewalks of Essex Street. A vampiress in lavender shorts and feathered boots sold maple chocolate walnut fudge in front of the Witch City tattoo parlor. A near-naked gypsy in purple-green veils danced with a pheasant in her arms around a plug-in Hanukkah menorah. A fat man in a fetching blue jeans dress sold amethyst and citrine charm bracelets in front of Medusa Cafe, but his stand got knocked over by a one-armed crone driving a mobility scooter who sang "Choo-choo" as she passed, her stump on the wheel, her lipstick ghastly, her gnarled right hand raised in trailing plumes of noxious cigarette smoke. Chewbacca leapt out of her way and slapped sparks from his fur. He gave a disgruntled growl before going back to playing Summer Lovin' on his ukulele. The old one-armed dervish drove off, choo-choo, parting a crowd of wanderers, slack-jawed tourists with camera straps tight across their bellies, yellow-vested police on segways, elderly rollerbladers, face-painted infants and harried parents, and college girls. So many hot, hysterical college girls that you'd think somebody had napalmed a sorority house. Jason, are you deaf? Sorry. Jason raised the phone and took the shot. Joey inspected the photo and nodded in approval. Your turn. No, thanks. Do it, Shaggy. Don't make me hex you. Jason gave in and traded places. He put an arm around Samantha's metal back. Her bronze body had flushed in the afternoon sun, warm through his glove, but her eyes were weary. No, downright creepy. And her smile was forced, like a Disneyland princess who'd had her toe stomped. Say chowder, cried Joey, who'd been practicing his New England accent all morning. Come on, man. Say chowder. Fine, chowder. Joey got the shot, and Jason surrendered Samantha to a chubby kid wearing a Gandalf beard who climbed up to worship her bronze bosom.